College Football 25 is set to release in less than a month, and the hype is absolutely real. I'm getting antsy. I don't know about you, but today we are going to rank the top 10 P4 teams to rebuild for Dynasty. Now, I've already done a top 8 group of 5 schools, so go check that out. It was really like a top 10 because I had some honorable mention on there as well. And today we're going to rank the P4 teams. Now, I have some criteria we will be using. In the top 3 are going to be number 1, most approved, who has the most approved. Number 2, difficulty of the build. And then number 3, recruiting history and potential. But I'm going to add in some more criteria, and this is according to College Football 25. They had to pay royalties to players and schools to get them to opt into the game. Now, they used a tier system. It was tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. And this was based on the final finish in the last 10 AP football polls. So if you were obviously a bottom feeder, you were more tier 4. If you were an elite tier, you were tier 1. And each tier has a different payout. Tier 1 is $99,000 they were paid to the university. Tier 2 is $59,000. Tier 3 schools got $39,000. And then tier 4 got $10,000. So we are going to go from 10 to 1 and rank all of these schools, and I will highlight which tier they are in. So that should give you an idea of probably how they're going to be rated as well in the game. So number 10 on my list, I'm going to go with Cincinatti. They are a tier 2 school. In 2021, Cincinnati made the college football playoff, and it didn't end well, but that team was very well coached, produced an eventual all-pro corner in Sauce Gardner and an NFL quarterback in Desmond Ridder, along with Alec Pierce, who has turned out to be a pretty good pro as well. Now, Luke Fickell left for Wisconsin a year later, but besides Fickell's first year at Cincinnati, he finished with records of 11-2, 11-2, 9-1, 13-4, and 9-4. That is just remarkable, that track record there at Cincinnati. But life after Fickell resulted in a 3-9 record and a 1-8 record in conference in the first year in the Big 12. And this is a team that needs like a full-on rebuild because it doesn't seem like they're trending upward anytime soon. And the Big 12 hasn't been kind to the Bearcats, but they have a lot of question marks. Brendan Sorsby, it will be their new starting quarterback. And he will have a couple of new transfer portal receivers to play with. And also true freshman Simeon Coleman is expected to make an impact at linebacker right away. If he continues to have a good summer, word out of camp early on in the spring is that he looks like a starter and could make an impact early on in his career. So number 9 on the list, probably one of the more popular rebuilds in this game, which is coming out in less than a month, is going to be Colorado. They are a tier 3 school, which pretty much means they were paid $39,000 to opt into the game. CU is probably going to be one of the more popular rebuilds because of the Deion Sanders effect. I'm personally a Colorado fan. This was pre-Deion. And I'm also a Denver Broncos fan, so full disclosure here. Shedeur Sanders is a top 5 quarterback in the nation. I don't think there's any, question about that. I think it's more the question of how good is he? He's going to be a first-round quarterback. He's obviously going to put up good numbers. We saw that last year. Travis Hunter is a top 5 player in the nation and probably going to be a top 5 highest-rated guy in the game just because of his two-way depth, and obviously he's just an immense talent. But it's the depth that's really the issue. Right now, they have one real impact freshman we know is going to come in and be an immediate starter, and that is Jordan Seaton, who is a left tackle. That was a big surprise in the recruiting central, if you were to speak. I mean, it's a big shock. I didn't expect them to get the number 1 tackle after having the offensive line that they had last year, but they got him. But the big thing is going to be their schedule. They do have to start off the season versus FCS powerhouse North Dakota, which was a very questionable schedule, to be honest, if we're looking back at that. I don't know. CU could be on upset alert right away. But then they have a conference schedule that features Baylor, Kansas State, Arizona, Cincinnati, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. And, man, those are going to be some tough games to win. And that's going to be kind of the fun in their rebuild. It's a tough schedule year 1. Obviously, you have some very talented guys at the top, but what are the role players going to do? What is the depth going to look like? That's going to be a big question. Number 8 on the list is Minnesota. They are a Tier 3 school, and they are in the North, obviously in the Big 12. It's going to be a fun rebuild to build Minnesota. PJ Fleck took over Minnesota and really breathed life into the football program that hadn't seen any major success, but they have actually won 5 bowl games in the last 6 years. So in bowl games, they're very, very successful, but they are close. But I feel like they are still far away at the same time from getting a Big Ten title. I think it's just an intriguing rebuild, seeing that, what they have to go against in the Big Ten. So many rivals created by the Big Ten. It's just such a great conference. Nobody has ever considered Minnesota as a serious contender, though, but there's major intrigue. I think the biggest thing is finding out who will be their quarterback to begin this rebuild. Will it be Max Brosmer, the graduate transfer, who was an FCS All-American for New Hampshire last year? He's thrown for 70 career touchdown passes. Or Drake Lindsey, who is a true freshman, the number 23 ranked quarterback in the nation after leading his high school team to an Arkansas State championship. He was actually the Gatorade Player of the Year, 54 touchdowns to 3 INTs, and the 7A Offensive Player of the Year in the state. And he's going to, if not be the starter right away, he's going to be a future starter for Minnesota, barring that he does not transfer in this very fluid transfer portal. But Minnesota is in a unique position to figure out, what to do, and they're going to be one of the more fun rebuilds in the new game. Number 7 on the list is going to be Indiana. They are a Tier 3 school. Curtis Rourke transferred to Indiana this offseason and is penciled to be the starter at quarterback for the Hoosiers, and he's looking to head a Hoosiers team who finished the last 3 seasons with losing records. Rourke comes over from Ohio, and he's looking to cap off a college career with a decent season, but this is just a school that has not been good. It's hard to even imagine what a road to the Big Ten championship looks like for Indiana, especially with the new competition added. Obviously, Oregon's there now. Washington's there. I mean, they have quite a challenge to just get over those teams, and that adds to the current competition in the Big Ten. They have taken full advantage of the transfer portal this year, but honestly, this could end disastrously. No chemistry, a lot of graduate transfers. I mean, the experience could help, but there's just a lack of continuity. I think Indiana is the perfect teardown rebuild if you want to get one in the Big Ten, and I think that it's just a good starting point to have at least guys that have come over from other schools and have experience, and see what you got and then figure it out from there. Number 6 on the list, going to the ACC, Wake Forest, a Tier 3 school. And in 2021, Wake Forest had an 11-3 record. Impressive, right? The only issue with it is that it's their second double-digit win in school history. I mean, this is as big as a rebuild as it gets, especially for a team that's never been ranked in the top 10. Dave Clawson will be their head coach for their 10th season in a row. He has created some stability and does have a 5-2 bowl record, but 0 conference championships. I think the allure of having stability as a head coach is very, very intriguing. If you go to this school, you might not have to worry about going into the carousel anytime soon. But saying that, Coach Clawson has been there 10 years, no conference championship, it's intriguing. Low expectations. I mean, that's the big thing here with Wake Forest. You're going to have low expectations, but you still have a lot to prove. If you want a player who is a freshman to build around, they have a 6'5" true freshman 4-star receiver in Jeremiah Melvin. I'm not sure he's going to come into the game rated very high, but 6'5" freshman 4-star sounds pretty good. But this is a team which returns a lot of starters, so there's going to be a lot of veterans that you can play right away, or you can go the route of playing the young guys. Who knows? But they will have a new starting quarterback in Hank Backmeyer, who transferred from Louisiana Tech. And they also have a senior leader, Jasheen Davis, who I project to be their highest rated player on the roster. He's coming off of back-to-back 7-sack seasons. He's got 20 sacks in his career. So at least you have a guy that can be the leader right now, day one in your rebuild. All right, we're into the top 5 now when we go to the SEC for the first time, and we have Vanderbilt, who is a tier 4 school, so as bad as it gets here on this list. Probably going to be one of the more popular rebuilds when the game comes out. I hear a lot of Vandy talk strictly because of the level of difficulty. They haven't won a conference championship in over 100 years. I did not say that incorrectly. 100 years. But let's talk about the good. They have the number 41 recruiting class and the number 37 ranked transfer class. They've done excellent going into this season. They have a couple of freshmen here. Safety Dante Carter could be an interesting true freshman to watch on defense, even though he has a couple of seniors ahead of him. But he is an intriguing guy to build around defensively. You might want to get him his playing time early before he transfers. And they say that's going to be a part of the game, so that's going to be very, very intriguing. Do you play a freshman to, obviously stop them from transferring? Who knows? Joseph McVay could be a home run hitter right away on offense as a true freshman. He's going to be a blazer. I looked up some of his highlights. He looks amazing. But the biggest impact on offense will be graduate transfer quarterback Diego Pavia from New Mexico State. He was the Offensive Conference USA Player of the Year. So he's coming into, obviously, the SEC. He could be in for a wake-up call because the competition is going to be a pretty big jump, but we'll see how he does. But now let's talk about the bad in Vanderbilt. They have a defense which ranked 130th in points allowed, 132 in opponent's yard per game. And did I mention they play in the SEC? I mean, this is as tough as it gets, and their defense is atrocious. That's the first thing you're going to have to build up. It's the defense because they're awful. All right, number 4 on the list is Virginia, back to the ACC. They are a tier 4 team, according to Ea College Football 25. The last time Virginia won a major college bowl was back in 1995 with the Peach Bowl, and they haven't had a winning season in the past 5 years. This one is one of the more interesting rebuilds for Power 5s because this is a blank slate offense, because Malik Washington, who went on to the NFL, had 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns a year ago, but he was the team's entire offense. If you turn on a Virginia game last year, which I actually watched a couple of them because obviously if you watch college football, you watch all the games, and Malik Washington was amazing, but who else do they have? Really right now, not a whole lot. Nobody rushed for over 400 yards last year. Sophomore Anthony Calandria will look to improve going into year 2 as the starter at quarterback, but he's really going to have to really make a big step in order for Virginia to be remotely competitive. If there is one player, though, to hang your hat on, it's senior receiver Malachi Fields. He's 6'4". He's a red zone nightmare. He will be a focal point of the offense, much like we saw from Malik Washington a year ago. Their defense has even more uncertainty, though, as they have a new pair of corners in Kempton Shine from Eastern Michigan, and then Kendron Smith from Penn. And those aren't like big schools. I mean, they're smaller schools, even though they probably are good players. They're going to go into the ACC where you're going to face ACC receivers. But after going 3-9 last year, the road to being a true contender, it's going to be quite a rebuild. All right, number 3, into the top 3 finally. UCLA, they are a tier 2 team. And to be one of the largest schools in the country and to be pretty much a top 3 high school football state, I'm thinking of Florida, Texas, California, UCLA has probably been a huge disappointment. Now, I just talked about earlier that if you go to a team like Wake Forest or maybe even Indiana or Minnesota, you have kind of a longer leash. Going to UCLA, you're going to have a short leash. But we'll see, because UCLA has just not had the big time success, but their expectations are going to be higher for you if you go with UCLA. They've only had 3 10-win seasons since 2000. They've been ranked in the top 5 since 2001, or they haven't been ranked in the top 5 since 2001, and haven't been to a New Year's Bowl since 1998. They have some new blood here in coaching, though. Deshaun Foster is going into his head coaching job here at UCLA for the first year. And then Eric Bieniemy goes from the NFL to the college ranks to be their offensive coordinator. They're looking to really establish a new culture, and maybe that's a part of the rebuild going into UCLA. I think you're going to have maybe a shorter leash than the other Power 4 schools that I mentioned, but this is a team that has a lot of rich history. Obviously, you're in California. You're going to get the big recruits. That's the big thing. They are really going to need it, though, because going into the Big Ten this year, obviously, they get to avoid Ohio State and Michigan in their first season. How did that happen schedule-wise? But they do return quite a few starters on offense. Logan Loya, who was their leader at receiver last year. He had 59 receptions last year. J. Michael Sturdivant, another one of their starters at wideout. And then quarterback Ethan Garbers, who can protect the football pretty well. We'll see how he steps up here in the Big Ten. Just a different brand of football. But I predict that Bieniemy is probably going to get the most out of him. But they're one of the more storied programs, and I have them ranked this high pretty much for the storyline in this rebuild. Is it a team that's going to go to the Big Ten and kind of fold? Or is this the finesse team that kind of still is teetering on the brink of being good, but not quite? Or do they get over the top here in the Big Ten finally and start to put themselves in that conversation for the college football playoff? All right, number 2 on my list. And this was hard. 1 and 2 was very, very hard, but we are going with Nebraska. They're a tier 4 school. Dylan Raiola is now their starting quarterback. Matt Rule is now their coach, and they probably have a top 10 defense in the nation going into this season. If you're looking for a reason to get a team back to glory, look no further than Nebraska, because this is a team that's got a very rich history, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But let's talk about their current roster. Isaac Gifford, safety for Nebraska. He could possibly be an All-American. You know, I look at their defense and they have studs all over the field, but Gifford, I think, is maybe their best defender. And historically, Nebraska has always produced defensive All-Americans. You know, I think back to Ndamukong Suh, guys like that. In 2003, they actually had the best rushing defense, total defense, and scoring defense since they joined the Big Ten. I mean, that just shows, you know, kind of the difference in culture that is now established in Nebraska. In each of those defensive categories, they were top 20 in the nation. The one underrated thing about this rebuild is the amount of rivalries which exist. There's Colorado and Nebraska. Obviously, that's their biggest rival. But then you look at the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the SEC. They have rivals all over: Iowa, Kansas, Kansas State, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota, so many more. And I think that this is going to be just a fun team to play with, just because every game is kind of like a rivalry. I don't know how many rivalries they will have in the new game, but with all the rivalries they have in real life, it's going to be a whole lot of fun to play against all these teams, obviously, week in and week out. But personally, I would enjoy the storyline of eventually returning to the Big 12. That could be a lot of fun. Obviously, you can, you know, establish yourself in the Big Ten too, do it that way. But I don't think they have anybody's respect. But I think that this is a team that has a lot to prove, but they are well suited. And it's probably the reason why I have them ranked number 2, because remember, one of my criteria was difficulty. And I think that having a top 10 defense right now, not say it's going to make this rebuild easy, but easier. But you still got to put in the work, still got to go out on the field and win. All right, number 1 on the list. This is a tier 3 school, and I'm going with Arizona State. Arizona State is one of the oldest schools in the NCAA. This will be year 128. But since 1995, they only have 2 conference titles. Those were both coming in the Pac-10. Their last All-American is a kicker in Zane Gonzalez in 2016. So it's been 8 years since they've had an All-American. They are coming off back-to-back 3-9 seasons and now leave a depleted Pac-12 conference to find a new identity. But they enter a loaded Big 12, which might be the most underrated of all the Power Fives, possibly. Kansas isn't going anywhere. Utah, with Cam Rising returning, is a powerhouse in itself, and they are a playoff contender, by the way, with Cam Rising. Kansas State is going to be scary good. Oklahoma State has an explosive offense led by Ollie Gordon. And obviously they have the rivalry with Arizona. Arizona isn't obviously like an elite school, but they have a decent rivalry with Arizona. And this might be quite the hill to climb. You know, speaking of last year, I just want to talk about how bad they were last year. And they might be the worst Power 5 next to Vandy, possibly. They had 4 starting quarterbacks last season. 4. They were ranked 124 in points per game. They were ranked 106 in yards per game. And they were slightly better on defense, 97 in opponents' yards per game. They are just an absolute bottom feeder. One thing I love about this particular rebuild is that they are in Arizona, and that's right between California and Texas. We're going to have a lot of competition in recruiting. I think the difference between a Texas team and maybe an Arizona team, or an Arizona team in California, is that you don't have that direct pipeline within the state. You're still a couple of states over. So are the recruits gonna want to play away from home a little bit? Like, yeah, you're close in terms of, you know, a couple of states over, but you're gonna have to really convince recruits to come, especially if they're, you know, hometown kids away from these, you know, Texas schools or these California schools. It's just in a very intriguing, you know, kind of location to be in. And obviously you have the good weather. I think let's talk about the roster real quick. Their quarterback of the now and future looks like Sam Leavitt. Is it Leavitt or Leavitt? I'm not exactly sure. Sam Leavitt, I'm going to say, who played 1 season at Michigan State, but he's unproven. He will have some competition and transfer Jeff Sims, who comes over from who we just mentioned, Nebraska. And I've seen Sims play. He's a decent quarterback, but he's going to have that veteran leadership. And I bet he transferred over to Arizona State expecting to play. So there's going to be some competition there. And it's going to be depending on how you want to play that out. Do you want to play the veteran in Jeff Sims, or do you want to play the younger quarterback and Leavitt behind center? They also got a pretty good transfer from USC and Malik Brown. I'm not sure what type of impact he's going to have, but he's played both running back and receiver. And then defensively, they have a new cornerback room of transfers and a bunch of unproven linebackers. So this is going to be like one of the hardest rebuilds, in my opinion. And to me, that's why it's the perfect candidate. They also have a pretty large stadium. It's over 50,000 seats. So you get to see, you know, in real time, they put this in the game where when you're not as successful, the stadium's more empty, and then as you get more successful, the stadium fills up. That's going to be pretty cool to see with all of these teams in this list. But Arizona State is my number 1 team to rebuild from a Power 4 conference. So the game comes out in less than a month. Let me know down in the comment section below what you thought of this list. I went kind of in depth, wanted to kind of give you guys a little preview of probably what's to come with the tier ranking system as well. I'm guessing they're going to use that on how they rank the teams in the games also, but we'll have to see. Early access comes out July 16th. Hope to see you guys all in the game. Make sure to comment down below, hit that like button, hit subscribe. Stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.